Welcome to Writers Anonymous YouTube channel. Writers Anonymous presents Even Stranger Stories. Episode 2. Bandstand.
It started in the middle of the night, an eerie but melodic piece of music that sounded both sad and soothing. Unable to sleep, I quietly got out of bed and padded over to the window, careful not to wake my wife. I peered out and saw faint light coming from the park opposite my house. I couldn't make out what was going on due to the thick line of oak trees along the fence. I had to go see. The music had an hypnotic effect, tugging at my emotions with the hope of, what? I had no clue. Getting dressed, I left the house, drawn to the sound like a moth to a candle. The park was locked, but that didn't put me off. I scaled the fence easily. I smiled as I got nearer. The music was getting louder, blocking out all my feelings. I stopped at the edge of a clearing, seeing for the first time the ornate bandstand. The light I'd seen had not been caused by any normal light bulbs, or other standard lighting that I may have seen before. The whole structure emanated an electric blue light. The musicians were dressed in shiny red uniforms with tall hats, not any clothing I recognized. There were 5 of them playing violin, piano, trumpet, drums and guitar. I couldn't move. One of them stopped playing and looked over at me. "Come and listen," he said with a smile, although his eyes were cold and dark. My feet obeyed his command, not stopping until I stood directly in front of him. I don't know how long I stood there. It could have been minutes, or hours. When the music stopped, the musician on the piano stood and handed me a flute. I was flustered. I couldn't play music. "You're one of us now," he told me. I looked down and saw I wore a uniform, just like theirs. And then, as if a light had switched on, I knew I could play the flute. "Let me join you," I said. So involved was I never noticed the blood-drained body in the grass, next to the bandstand. My body.
Raising the stakes by following a whim usually doesn't pan out. The difference in life is about who it doesn't pan out for. Raising the stakes.
After a failed marriage, impulse turned me into who I thought I'd never become. Sitting around a poker table in the local casino. Opposite was Grace, a 30-something woman with scars on her arms and a stolid and readable expression. But nice enough. I'd had dinner with her earlier. Steak fixed me up for the night. To my right was the Chinaman, lathered in jewelry and a pinstripe suit. He ordered his 5th double whiskey as the anticipation of the final hand unfolded. The gamble now was that I had been paid by certain members to throw the game in favor of this smarmy, unpopular man. A small crowd gathered as the flop went down. King of clubs, 7 of diamonds, and a life-saving ace of clubs which gave me a pair. Grace, with unblinking eyes, raised an eyebrow, and then £60 worth of chips, which was the big blind minimum bet. The Chinaman called with a sickening confidence. I called with a squint. My ears itched now, a familiar sign of nerves as I stared at my depleted chips. The turn was laid. 7 of clubs. Promising. Grace raised again. What was she playing at? She didn't blink. Both the Chinaman and I called her bet. But then the river was set down by the dealer. Jack of clubs. Grace blinked twice. My signal to back off. She put another 60 down. And surprisingly, the Chinaman called. I wanted to gamble, not be slung a backhander and let them dictate me. His entourage of suited men leered at me over his shoulder. Mentally, I took a deep breath and pushed my chips over the line. The Chinaman eyed me intensely as we showed our cards. Grace revealed 3 of a kind. The Chinaman smiled at his ace-high flush, but I couldn't gain control with my full house. At least my return home was now less flooded with peril. However, my luck changed as Grace pulled out a serrated knife and impaled the Chinaman's hand to the table as he reached for his winnings. That was my steak knife, I thought.
Our choices define where we end up. But sometimes we're not in control of our choices. Conflicted love.
He loved the way she caressed him. He loved how predictable she was. Twice a day she would turn up, wrap her sometimes cold, sometimes warm arms around him, and embrace him completely. He didn't know where she went in between times. He was blind, and she never said. Just a lighter touch indicating she was about to leave, always about 660 minutes after her first touch. She didn't always like him so much, although she never said directly. Occasionally she'd come charging in and throw him about and he'd smack into others of his ilk, and then she'd calm, and her embrace would be complete once again. For most of the day, he called it day, but he didn't know if it was day or night. His vision completely defunct. He put up with her tantrums. He loved her. He loved the way she held him and didn't really care where she went. It was then, one day, in one of her moods, when she came at him with a rumbling roar. Instead of her usual calming shush, she knocked him further than he'd ever been before. He was surprised, and for a long while, as her loving grasp enveloped him, he couldn't figure out why her forceful approach, this time, had thrown him further than in the past. As he jostled against his brothers, whilst she rocked him back and forth, for the first time he felt smaller than them, a lesser version of them, a lesser version of his brothers, and, for the first time, he decided to question her, rather than solely accept her devotion. "Have you done something to me?" he thought. A trickling laugh was his answer. He was confused. She'd been with him for so long. How could she be like this? "You'll soon learn," she shushed. "What do you mean? Why are you so cruel?" Her trickling laugh was his reply. He was silent. "You truly don't know?" she asked. No, he answered. "I'll tell you," she said. "You're a stone and I am the sea. For me, I'll always be."